Welcome back to the Society of Professional Journalists series on broadcast news writing. This is the second video in the series, so if you missed the first part, be sure to go back and watch Broadcast News Writing Part 1. Again, narrator, University of Mississippi Broadcast Journalism Professor, Dr. Deborah Wenger.
So this second video in our series about broadcast writing is focused on how your writing changes when you bring in sound and video. So of course, sound is relevant to people writing for radio and for television. But for video, of course, we're talking about people who are telling television news stories. So the big things for me when writing around sound is that you choose your sound bites first. Why do I say that? Essentially, when you are creating a story, you need to know where you're going even before you get started. So select all of the sound bites you hope to use in your piece so that you have a good sense of how the whole story hangs together. You need to have found your focus, and choosing your sound bites will help you reinforce your focus and help keep your story on track. Now, this is an area that there may be some pushback from people who are listening to this. I say that the average soundbite length is about 8 to 12 seconds. Again, this is a rule of thumb. There are some amazing 2-second sound bites and some incredible 23-second sound bites. But when you're just starting out, I would sort of use this as a rule of thumb. If it's much shorter than that, you might have someone listen to it to make sure that they understand what you're trying to convey in a very short sound clip. Or if it's a lot longer than that, you might want to have someone listen to it and see if they get bored, if they continue to be interested all the way through the sound bite. The third thing I think is really critical when you start to work with sound is to figure out how to write into and out of sound bites. So what I'm talking about is setting up the audience so that the soundbite they're about to hear is going to make sense and that they know what role this soundbite is playing in the story. And then writing out of soundbites is how to keep somebody continuing on through the story with you as you go. So let's watch a story that I think illustrates effective writing into and out of soundbites.
Thank you, Dr. Sutton, Ms. Val Ross, and Jeremy Scruggs for being the glue that holds ASB together.
Tensions ran high in Bryant Hall last night as 49 ASB senators debated whether the current state flag should fly on the Ole Miss campus. The debate was extended 30 minutes to allow everyone a chance to voice their opinion. Debate spectator Camille Walker was a speaker at last Friday's rally promoting the resolution.
Heritage is not a monument. Heritage is not names on a building, and I know because I don't have any flags. I don't have a monument.
She says she was surprised by the amount of opposition during the debate, but was happy with the outcome.
I am so excited about the results from the debate. I am pleased with the outcome. That's the outcome that I was hoping for. I was unsure at first, but I'm glad. I feel like they made the right decision.
Blake Hembry, Applied Sciences senator, voted against the resolution. He supports change, but thinks the resolution was poorly worded.
I'm proud of what we have done today. In the fact that change will be made. Maybe not the way I view it should be made, but change will be made.
Some senators, like Bella Gonzalez, initially opposed the resolution, but experienced a change of heart during the debate.
Honestly, what truly sealed in the deal and clarified my vote was knowing that whether that flag offends me or not, if it truly does offend even one person on this campus, I can't bear knowing that I contributed to that, and therefore I was like, you know what, I cannot vote against this. This flag has got to come down.
When the debate was over, drafter of the resolution, Alan Kuhn, felt emotional, but said he was relieved.
I think it shows our state, our nation, and the world that we care about the students that attend the University of Mississippi, that we hear their voices, we respect their identities, their experiences, and their differences, and we embrace change and we embrace progress, and I think that's a substantial step for our university.
Kuhn says he's been in contact with the faculty senate who will meet tomorrow to discuss advancing the resolution. For Newswatch, Lacey Russell.
So what you saw Lacey did in that story was a couple of things. First, she identified every speaker. Now, I will say that you don't need to ID every speaker with that person's name. Let's say you talk to 10 students and you were going to use 3 sound bites from students. You could simply just say, students we spoke to were concerned about the president's new plan. And then you can butt those sound bites together, 3 students, one after another, without pausing to say, and then Deb Wenger said this, and then Bill Jones said this, and then Peter Smith said that. But you want to give the audience a sense of the role that the person being interviewed is playing in the story. Now, for those of you who are working in video, one of the things that you probably noticed in watching that story is that as she was identifying every speaker before we heard from them, we saw video of that person. So that requires someone to be really thinking about the sound bites that they're going to use when they're in the field, to be able to make sure that they're shooting video of that person doing something relevant to the story. So in her piece, we saw somebody sitting in the audience or standing up or reaching for a microphone. So all of those visuals were used to introduce that person before we heard him or her speak. A great reporter by the name of Boyd Hubert calls this the handshake shot. So just like when you meet someone, you hold out your hand to shake their hand and look them in the eye, that's what you're doing with a handshake shot in video. You're introducing that person to the audience, letting us see who we're talking about. And speaking of the amazing Boyd Hubert, I'm going to let him show you in this next video how he leads out of sound bites by repeating words or ideas that were in the sound. And I want you to also pay attention to how he leads into sound bites by identifying the speaker and giving us a sense of what they're going to say.
Today's our first day open for business.
You could see the new business in Brooklyn Center as a hamburger joint.
Hi, how you doing?
Or you could picture the nation's economy in a box.
2 checker burgers with cheese, please.
That's Wendy Reno, who just opened the place with her husband.
My background is in engineering. I'm actually a civil engineer by trade.
2 years ago, they were home builders.
I need a small fry as well.
Just with the decline in individuals wanting to purchase homes, even being able to finance homes, it drastically reduced our business.
Yeah, 2 boxes.
William Best is running the fryer. He was an area manager at Walgreens.
And your strips are done. 2 strips are done.
Till his layoff after 28 years.
No, I've never been in food before. It's different, but I won't complain. I like it.
Large banana, small strawberry.
Chris Evans worked in IT.
This is actually about probably half of what I was making doing technical support for Apple. And but you know, if it pays the rent, that's all that matters, right? All right, it's going to be $481.
In 3 weeks' time, we received over 300 applications.
My background's actually in culinary arts. One large fry. Large fry up, thank you.
Ray So was an executive sous chef.
Ticket number 4.
At some fancy restaurants.
Got a double champ, large fry. I think right now with quick serve it's actually gone up just because people are looking for a meal that's, you know, $2, $3, $4.
$8.35 out of 20.
Florida-based Checkers has opened 30 new stores this year, while high-end restaurants and hundreds of Starbucks have been closing. Did we mention what used to be in this space?
This used to be actually a Starbucks. It closed down probably about a year ago. I guess if they went to across the street, there's cheaper coffee at the Super America.
You can't do that until the chicken strips are ready yet.
All of the workers we met.
And what size combo would you like on that?
Helpful, determined, and happy to be employed.
2 kids meal strips.
Yet none of them were they expected to be.
All right, Freddie, you're up, man.
You could go to the U to study the economy, or you could stop for a burger and listen. Boyd Hubert, KARE 11 News, Brooklyn Center.
So one of the things about Boyd Hubert is that it's absolutely clear that he knows his video inside and out before he ever starts writing his script. So you'll notice that there is never a time in one of his stories when what he's talking about conflicts with what you're seeing on the screen. So there's a concept called cognitive dissonance that says when the eyes and the ears compete, the eyes win. And for people who are writing for broadcast, in broadcast television in particular, you have to keep that in mind, because you might have written a wonderful script, but if your video doesn't work with what you're saying, people are going to pay attention to what they're seeing and not listening to you. So the best way to communicate effectively is to reference your video. So you'll hear that term often, video referencing. So calling people's attention to what they're seeing in the visuals. That's also called writing to video. And when you have those two working together, there's good research out there that shows that that is the most effective way to communicate the most information from your story. So when your video and your sound work together, the audience comprehension of what you're trying to communicate is much higher. The other thing that I think will really help you as a broadcast journalist is to think about what the audience is going to see for every line of content that you write. And so when I'm working with inexperienced broadcast journalists, I'll actually have them set up their scripts that way. So on the right-hand side of the page, they've listed out everything they want to say, and I tell them on the left-hand side of the page, they need to list out everything the audience will see. And that gets you in the habit of really thinking about, will my video be referenced by what I'm saying in my audio? Ultimately, there may be times when you won't want to begin with your very best video. Maybe you're saving it up for a surprise at the end of the story. But in today's really fractured multimedia, multitasking world, we need to make sure that the first video that someone sees in your story is some of your best video. It may not be your very best, but it needs to be really good, because you're going to get one chance to capture the attention of the audience. And if you have really boring video, like a outside of a building or a sign, that's very rarely going to compel someone to watch your story. The other thing I want to mention before I close this second in our series is that the weaker your video is, the better your writing to video has to be. So if you arrive on the scene of an accident and all there's left is some glass on the pavement and maybe a dented street sign, you don't want to write this, exciting couple of sentences that say something like, it was a race through Charlotte with death at the finish line. You would never want to write something like that. But you want to write to the video you have. So you probably want to say something like, broken glass and a dented sign are the what's left after two vehicles collided following a police chase through Charlotte. You have to make sure that you're telling your audience why they're seeing what they're seeing on screen while you're speaking. So here are your 4 key takeaways for writing to sound and video. Remember that audio is just as important, if not more important, than the video in your broadcast news stories. And regardless of whether you're working in radio or TV, you want to make sure you're setting up your sound bites effectively. That means identifying who is speaking for your audience and giving us a little sense of what they're going to say. Prepare us to get the most out of that sound bite. If you know your video really well, I guarantee you'll become a better writer, because you're going to know exactly what you have and what you can work with and how you can use that to communicate more effectively to your audience. And finally, video referencing is key. Great television news stories are sort of a beautiful marriage between the words that the reporter is speaking, the visuals that you're seeing while he or she is speaking, and the sound bites that you're hearing from the people who are included in the story. And not to forget natural sound. We certainly heard a lot of that in Boyd Huppert's story, but that's a discussion for another day. I hope you'll find these fundamentals useful, and I'm sure if you take this to heart, you'll be on your way to becoming a better broadcast news storyteller.